finds commonalities irrespective of the age, experience, or industry. I, Asha, along with Kaushik Srinivasan, would be moderating today's webinar. So Walt Disney beautifully said, and I quote, first, think. Second, dream. Third, believe. And finally, dare. In today's episode, we have two extremely creative people with us, Charusmitha Rao and Neel. They'll take us through an exciting session that will help us realize that all of us can be creative. Neel has 22 years of experience across learning and business. He has held various roles as head of learning and development in Akamai Technologies, Fidelity India, and Swiggy. He has a deep interest in learning and innovation space. He is the founder of Outthink Consulting and is the co-creator of 108% Indian, an Indian brainstorming toolkit. Next, Charusmitha Rao has over 16 years of professional experience in talent development, organizational development, and learning experience design. She currently leads the learning and talent development function for APJ and India and chairs the Women's Forum for India at Akamai Technologies. Neel and Charu are passionate about reimagining Indian culture, and as a result, they have created Culture, a venture dedicated to projects connected to rejuvenation of Indian culture. Over to Neel and Charu.
Thank you, Asha, for the fantastic introduction. I hope I am audible and visible. And I hope I can see that in the chat window. Yep, I can see that. All right. So thank you so much for the fantastic introduction. For the next 65 odd minutes, or until Kaushik stops us, we will take you through a workshop on what we call as fueling your creativity through divergent thinking. Yes, that's me and that's Charu on the right. Both of us, despite our fairly different careers, we work together when it comes to relooking at Indian culture, reimagining various aspects of Indian culture and making it relevant and pertinent to the new generation. So that's the context in which we have come together, talking about 108% Indian, a divergent thinking toolkit purely based on Indian ideas. The story of how it got created is a story that I'll share at some other point. But what you would experience today is a glimpse of the cards and the methods. So that's what we'll take you through over the next 65 minutes, among other things. I'm going to start this session today with the story of Malcolm McLean. Malcolm McLean is not a very well-known person. He is, in fact, he's one of the people that most of us don't know about. But he played a very, very important role in revolutionizing something, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute. But during the 1930s and 40s, Malcolm McLean ran a trucking company in the US called the McLean Trucking Company. Now, Malcolm's objective was, he was basically a profit seeker. He wanted more profit out of his trucking company. And what he did was he wanted to see, how do I make my trucks more efficient so that I can get goods from point A to point B at the fastest speed possible? This was the question he had in mind. I'm not going to tell you what he did, and I promise to reveal the answer to you in the end. But suffice it to say that one, he faced a lot of hurdles. He overcame a lot of hurdles, and practically every one of those hurdles required what we call as divergent thinking. So what exactly is divergent thinking? Divergent thinking is the ability to think of many possibilities from one idea or a trigger. It's obviously useful when you're looking for ideation, solving problems, looking for solutions, when you need insights. So a typical example could be of divergent thinking could be how to gain more market share. It could be how to reduce cost. It could be how to build better customer experience. And in Malcolm's case, it could be how to move goods faster from point A to point B. So in this process, Malcolm had to generate a lot of ideas. Malcolm had to produce different categories of solutions. Malcolm had to embellish or build on what already existed. And it's fairly obvious that Malcolm had to be original in this process. He also had to face a lot of complexity. See, a lot of problems are not necessarily simple as much as we might read that they are simple, but some problems are complex and they require a certain degree of complexity to be resolved. Malcolm also had to take a lot of risk. And it's a fantastic story. Like I said, I'll complete it in the end, but he had to take a lot of risk in this process. Obviously, he had to imagine. And what I would also say that if I were to say what is the one characteristic that we can all cultivate as we work towards being a divergent thinker, I think that answer to me would be curiosity. If we can exhibit probing behaviors, look deeper into something, wanting to know more about something, all of it is curiosity. And if that's the one thing that we can cultivate, it will actually enable every single one of us to be divergent thinkers. So what you saw here, these four: fluency, flexibility, elaboration, originality, and complexity, risk-taking, imagination, and curiosity, all of which Malcolm McLean, of course, used, is these are the ways in which creativity is measured today. It's measured in a test called the Torrance test, and we won't be talking about it. But these are important components of this one thing that we call as divergent thinking. So, what's divergent thinking? Divergent thinking is all about being able to start from one place and come up with a lot of ideas. Convergent thinking is when you see a lot of ideas, the ability to focus and say, here is the one thing we want to do, or here are the three things that we want to do. Good design always converges. But ideally, it's good to diverge before you converge, because if you don't diverge enough, you may not have looked at the range of possibilities or the range of options. And that in turn brings us to our first poll of the day. So, Roger, if you can get the first poll up. What I would like you to choose from is I am a divergent thinker or I am a convergent thinker. I'm hoping that all of you are attempting the poll, and let's see what we get as the results when Roger is ready.
Neel, about 420 odd people in the room right now, so let's just give them a few seconds more, right?
Sure, sure.
Neel, you have the answers. You're able to view them?
Yep. So about 45% of you identify yourself as divergent thinkers. That's great. And we hope that we can give you some insight as part of this program. And for the 23% who identified yourself as convergent thinkers, and for the 32 who haven't identified themselves as neither, none of the above, what we would like to say here is this was a bit of a trick question. There is actually there is actually nobody who's a pure divergent thinker or a pure convergent thinker. We all need to diverge, especially at the points when we're looking at solutions. And we all need to converge, especially when we have to focus on stuff. But yes, some of us do identify ourselves as divergent or convergent thinkers. So if you need help from either or, if you're a divergent thinker and you need help from a convergent thinker, feel free to work with your team or your colleagues. But ultimately, it's a combination of these two that makes a business move forward. So thank you for the response. We'll have another poll in some time. And so moving on. I have a question for you, and if you could respond on the chat window. Why is divergent thinking important for us? When I say us, I mean every single one of you who's there in PMI, every single one of you who's present here today, in your roles. Why is divergent thinking important for you, and why now? If you can give me a few responses on the chat window. To find solutions for a problem statement, says Janaki Raman. Yep. To have unique ideas, Janish helps us see what options are possible. Alok, yeah. Multiple possibilities, Jatin, yep. Open to hearing everyone's view, as Abhishek says, yep. Yes, as Sajal says, yes, new technology is coming in as well. Value engineering, sustainability, new age business, yep. Yeah, absolutely. So I think and I think that's a good point, as somebody mentioned. COVID has ensured that everyone has to see multiple options and possibilities. It's a very different world today from what it was just a few months ago. So thank you so much. I think pretty much all of us agree that divergent thinking is very important for us right now. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to try a divergent thinking game. Again, I would require your interactions on the chat window, but I'll give instructions for the game as we begin. So I'm going to show you two objects on the screen. Is to combine those two objects into a third new object. There is no other rule, and you need not stop at one. I'm going to give you an example. So the first example is monsoon and dog. And if you were to combine this into a third new object, It could be something like this. It could be a hot dog, whatever, all of these answers. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to give you a live example which you're all going to try. And I'll tell you why we are doing this, but it is a divergent thinking exercise. So if this is clear, let's go to the first two objects on your screen. So here's the object, fire an apple. On the chat window, create a third new object using any combination of fire and apple and post it on the chat window. Apple pie, hot red, burnt apple, apple tree, apple of Eden, roasted apple, fire truck, apple care, fireworks. So you don't have to stop at one, by the way. You can keep thinking divergent. And there is a reason we are doing this. Khatta meeta. Fizzy apple. Apple soup. I like that. Though I almost said it as apple soap. Firewall. Fire TV. Safarchand bomb. Yep. So you get the idea. This is nice. I'm going to actually give you example number 2. But I really love the enthusiasm of the audience. Fantastic, guys. Newton of fire. Nice. Good. You guys are really getting a hang of it. So we go to the next one.
Neel, I have to call this one from Ashish who says jealous of iPhone.
Oh, good one. All right. So here's the second one. Tortoise plus letter on the chat window. Slow coach, Indian Post, tortoise. Okay, snail mail, rabbit mail, potty. That's an interesting one. Mosquito memo, slow motion, post office, reading tortoise, shell frame spectacles. Okay, authentic documents. I like that. Kachwa chop. Okay, yeah. Good to see you guys enjoying this. It's a very important part of the divergent thinking process, and we'll actually tell you why it is such an important process. 10 years later, wisdom post. Fantastic. I wish there was a way of recording these responses.
Absolutely. There are some more in the Q&A section. Ninja mail, slow motion, race, letter.
Yeah, good, nice. Fantastic responses. All right, so we go for the last option. So fastest fingers first. Okay, I think I made a mistake. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. So thank you. Actually, this was the last one. My bad. Now, what you would have noticed is this is difficult at first. When we first try this, it's like, oh, what am I supposed to do with these two things? But you noticed, and you notice this for every single one of you, that it unlocks progressively, which means you begin to try this once and you get better. So if you notice, the first set of answers were almost all connected to snail mail or apple pie, and then it becomes better. So divergent thinking is like that. It is difficult at first, it unlocks, and it becomes progressively easier, which is the reason we made you do this 2 times. Ideally, we would have made you do it 3 times, but we have a time constraint. So the reason why we do this is because divergent thinking is a muscle. The more you use it, the more you can tap into it. So for every single one of us who have this doubt, how can I be more creative, or how can I be a more divergent thinker? The answer is very simple. The more you use it, the more you can tap into it. I mean, it's easier said than done, but as we said right at the start, that every one of us is creative and every one of us can be creative. One of the ways to do this is to ensure that we use divergent thinking and recognize that it's a muscle. It's not something, it's not a mystery. You do enough of it, you get better at it. It's about as simple as that. Fairly obvious by now that divergent thinking leads to creativity. The more ideas you have, the more divergent thoughts you have, it will lead you into a creative dimension. So what I would like you to do now is to think of your own personal creative experience, because a lot of us have our own ways of being creative. So for example, my personal experience is I have to give a lot of time to my brain to marinate on an idea. It appears as if I have no idea, I have no way, no solution. And then suddenly, usually when I'm in a morning walk or in the shower, and I know for some of you it's in a different place, and I know that will come out somewhere. you get the answer. So every one of us has our own creative experience, and that's what we have in the next poll. I would like you to choose your creativity experience. This is multiple choice, so it could be a combination of one or more, but choose your creativity experience. Yes, I also am aware that it may not cover the entire gamut of creativity experiences, but the point here is for us to recognize what is our individual creativity experience. So what is our way? Thanks, Roger.
Just a quick call out that you can select more than one choice or all of it as well. So this is a multiple choice question where you can choose more than one, whatever works for you.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Vijay. So the significance of the background card is what we mentioned at the start. 108% Indian. This is the Indian brainstorming toolkit that I'm a co-creator of. There's a couple of us who have come together and created this, and I'll share a little bit more about this in the end. So the name of the Indian brainstorming toolkit is 108% Indian. 108% Indian. Yeah. So a lot of you can see this, right? So all of us have different ways of. So some of us have flashes of inspiration. For some of us, it happens during a walk or a shower or at the potty. Some of us are astonished at the idea. Some of us say we worked on it. Some of us have, yeah. So each one of us has our own creativity experience. So, it's important to know what's your creativity experience. And the reason is, first of all, divergent thinking is a muscle. You need to know your creativity experience. The combination of this is what will get you more ideas and more insights. So, therefore, the question, how do you tap into your divergent thinking process? How do we do this, right? So the first thing is to be aware of your own process, and that's the reason why we did the previous poll. What is my creative experience? How am I going to get a solution? It's important to be aware of our own process. The second thing is to flex the muscle over and over again, which is the point we made at the start while we all played with the divergent thinking game. What we are doing here is flexing the muscle over and over again. A lot of times we don't necessarily do that. At work, we often, rather than go into a divergent thinking mode, we say, no, this is enough, and we kind of close our options. Therefore, important to flex your muscle over and over again. What happens in this process is you build your creative confidence. So what that means is, if you come up with a wacky idea and a bunch of people laugh at it, or you get laughed in a meeting, it shouldn't matter. You have to continue to keep doing that to build your creative confidence. Almost everyone who carries the label of being creative today is a person who's had a bunch of knocks on their creative confidence and over time decided, no, this is the way I think. So in order to tap into your into your divergent thinking, it is important to build your creative confidence. And a lot of times that's the only thing that comes in the way. We feel we are not creative. And the moment you take that off, guess what? Every one of us is creative. You can use tools to trigger your mind. You can also look around you and trigger your mind. There are lots of ways you can trigger your mind. And like you'll see in the continuation of the story, McLean triggered his mind using something absolutely different. So you trigger your mind and let the idea marinate. It takes time. No, look, and I think some of you, if you're part of creative teams, you can never get an idea in 10 seconds, 30 seconds, in 2 hours. It may not happen. A good creative idea needs time to marinate in your head. Your brain will play with it. And again, we'll see how and why, but until the marination happens and you come up with an idea, you're not going to get a new idea. So now we go into the next segment, which is we'll explore our creativity. So you will all explore your own creativity. Now, if there is a very easy way, or if I were to crunch everything written in creativity into 2 sentences, the first one would be learn the rules, and the second one would be break some rules. And you will notice this for every person and every idea, for every business, everything that has been creative. There is somebody who looked at the rules, who learned the rules, and figured some rules could be broken. And you can take any example. This works for every single example, which means that so one of the ways to see this, right? Am I creative enough is to say, well, did I break any rules? If you didn't break any rules, very likely you're not creative enough. So this is one rule of thumb which you can always ask yourself if in the process of being creative. Now, coming to you all as being part of PMI, being project managers and experts in a road field, what is your advantage? You know all the rules. And therefore, one of the one of the right places to start exploring our creativity is in our own domain where we know the rules. The more you know the rules, the easier it is for you to break. But at the same time, the fact that you know the rules often comes in the way of breaking, which is why you find that very often it is an industry outsider who comes in and breaks the rules. But yes, in your context, you have an inherent advantage in your world. You know all the rules. So let's start by breaking some rules. So one more thing as we go along is one of these wrong ideas that we have in our head is if I'm sitting on a beach in Goa enjoying the sunset, I will be creative. No, that's not how the mind works. You have to give the mind a goal to be creative. So the goal can be from something you hate. The goal can be from something that you're very passionate about. In some cases, the goal can be a provocative question that has come to you from a client or the industry or something. But it is important to have a question in your mind as you think of being creative. And that's what I want you to do before the rest of the session. I want every single one of you, and I don't want you to share it right now, but I want every single one of you to pick a passion, a problem, or a provocation in your mind for the rest of the session. So I want you to have this question in your mind as we go through the rest of the session. So a sample question would be how to make my process more efficient, what should my next marketing idea look like, how to service better during the pandemic. These are samples, don't use these, but please have a question in your mind before we proceed. And if you can indicate on the chat window that yes, you have thought of a question, just write yes. Not all of you, but some of you can write. I know that we can move to the next segment. I have thought of a passion and working on it. So yes, keep that in your mind, Rekha, as you go along. Yes, Priscilla, how to manage HR process efficiently is a sufficiently good question. Keep it in your mind, and as we go through the rest of the session. All right. So I'm hoping that all of you have a passion, a problem, or a provocation in your mind for the rest of the session. So now, what you need. So here's the other thing, right? Creativity actually, unless you are, and I'll talk about it in a minute, unless you are somebody like a Reliance Jio, you need constraints. All of us need constraints, and all of us, whether we like it or not, we always have constraints to work with. Whatever passion or challenge you picked up, there's always going to be a constraint. There is no creativity. In fact, constraints often create or drive creativity. So again, this notion of having all the money in the world and trying to be creative actually doesn't work. Like I said, except for certain people, it doesn't really work. So the idea is you need to have constraints. And what I want you to do now is for the next poll, I want you to pick in this problem that you have thought about, what are your constraints? And I want you to keep that in mind as we go along. So Roger, if you can bring up poll number 3.
Just a call out that this poll will be available for a minute, encouraging everybody to answer. And again, this is a question where multiple options can be selected. You don't have to restrict yourself to one option.
Yeah, we also recognize you may have other constraints, but this is just a set of constraints that we would like you to think about. Yeah, Rupesh, it's possible mindset can be the biggest constraint, but very often there are some real constraints as well. Like, for example, one never has unlimited money or unlimited time. So while I agree with you, yeah, in a real world scenario, we do face certain constraints. Yes, Ashish, again, true. Autonomy to exercise options, yeah, all of it is true. Mindset is obviously a very big constraint. But we hope that with today's session, you will have some thoughts on how to work on that mindset. Yep. Time is it's very interesting. The time is often the biggest constraint, and money, of course, is the second biggest. But yes, these are constraints that typically come in the way of us realizing our passion, so to say. So let's dive into the next segment.
All right. Good evening, folks, and it's been amazing to see the level of interactions and energy so far. So let's dive right in to see how we can connect whatever you've learned so far on divergent thinking to something which may be really personal or unique to each one. So the problem, like Neel said, that you've picked, it could be a passion or a problem or a provocation, like he said. That's something that we're going to apply this divergent thinking on. And what you're going to see here in the next few slides as part of the exercise are cards, some sample of cards from the 108% Indian toolkit. And they're all a part of the toolkit to enable divergent thinking. And each card has an abstract image, and it could be either a concept or a construct or something which is a quirk, an Indian quirk, and all of which are rooted in Indian ideas. And like you can see here, it could be the chai that you drink every day over conversations, or it could be the famous feast on the banana leaf that we have in India. So all these simple things that are around us act as inspiration or prompts to trigger or to nudge divergent thinking. So let's dive right in. What comes to your mind when you see this image?
And if you could mention that on the chat window.
Yeah. Rekha says glass of wine. Yeah, of course, on a Saturday evening. Vaibhav says space. Interesting. Egg yolk. Planets. Flying disc. Okay. Mickey Mouse. Wow, the answers are just pouring in. Whirlpool. Lime squeeze. Priscilla says table tennis. Motion. Pankaj. Okay. I'm not able to keep pace with this. This is great. Bunny rabbit. A couple of you are saying dosas, tossing a pizza base. Interesting. Galaxies, flipping an omelette, rabbit, abstract art. All are abstract arts, by the way. Automotive parts, gold coin. Okay, more galaxies. Jay says find my way puzzle. Interesting. Spinning wheels. Okay, Satya says ideas. Ashish says juggling with aliens. Wow, I think your imagination is just running wild right now. So again, there is no one single right answer to this. It's great to see the level of imaginations, and using words alone can sometimes limit us when it comes to thinking divergently. And these kind of abstract images, and in this case, they're all hand-illustrated images. They act as metaphors to prompt your intuitive thinking, and like you can see, it opens up the creative sides of your brain. And each card contains something which has an Indian quirk attached to it. So, Neel, if you could move to the next slide, as you can see, some of you actually guessed it right. They are inspired by the 99 varieties of dosas that you see on your street side. And if you're especially from Bangalore, I'm sure you would have visited one of these dosa shops where you get all kinds of dosas. Who knew that a simple, humble breakfast as dosa would have been made into 99 varieties? So that was the inspiration for this card. And more importantly, the question that you see on the bottom here, what would make someone curious? And what if you provided unlimited choice? So what we want you to do now is to apply this to the question that you had in mind, the passion, the problem that you picked. Apply this particular question or the insights that you got from the picture to the question that you have on your mind. And don't tell us your insights yet. Just apply. Maybe you can note it down in your notepad because we're going to continue with this exercise with a few more such images and see what opens up for you. Okay, so we're going to move to the next one. And remember, the cue words for this particular image are unlimited choice and build curiosity. Like Neel said, curiosity is the single most important thing for divergent thinking. So that's your cue. The next one, what do you see here? Okay, I see the previous ones also had things like Sudarshana Chakra and Rumali Roti. Okay, lotus, meditation, yoga. A lot of you are saying lotus, spiritual, Lakshmi, interesting, Rangoli, more lotus, meditation, abstract crown, interesting. Again, topic of a pizza, porn, chakras, dance from Kerala, okay. Creative design, health. Rajesh says meditation. Prashant says sacred games.
There's a Balinese costume there.
Preeti says Indian languages. Okay. Ma Durga Uday Kumar. Wow. Interesting. Rajlakshmi Films logo. Okay, state of brain, which I say state of brain. Wow, great responses, and I think you're already warmed up to divergent thinking, as we can see here, angelic symbols. Great. So, like you can see here, if you pay attention to your first thought or the first impressions that when you see an image, it's usually loaded with a lot of insights, and because your mind or your logical part of the brain has not got a chance to jump in as yet. So when you don't think too much and when you just go wild with your imagination, it results in so many different perspectives. And like most of you guessed, it is the lotus, which is an auspicious symbol in India. And metaphorically also, it is about retaining your goodness in the middle of whatever is around you. So the question at hand here is, what is your innate character that will stay with you? Fastest fingers Neel has. If you could go back.
Okay, I'm not sure if I can go back. I'm going to try.
Okay, so yeah, I think that the question was about what is that innate character in you that you will retain no matter what's happening around you, and what is the symbol of purity and values. So remember, you need to apply the insight that you get from this question to the question that you had on your mind, all of you. And the cue for you is your core values and how are you staying true to them. So remember to jot it down, keep it somewhere because it's all going to come together at the end of this exercise. Now moving on to the next one. Okay, this will be interesting. So what comes to your mind when you see this? Okay, telephone, missed call, okay, map, telephone directions, jammer, telephone caller, call divert, business calls, Yatish, Manoj, okay. Now I'm not able to keep pace with the number of options which are coming in. Call always divert, signal from satellites, call centers, call forwarding, shop market call, suspense, okay, call right away, Airtel call disconnects, who's calling indication, okay, communication, call to cloud. Great, wonderful answers. Okay, there's more coming. Giant says path. Bhavani says, imagining the way to go to somewhere as per the call. Okay. Surprise inbound help. 3G, 4G, 5G. Who's calling? Auto voice response. Call getting forwarded. Spam caller. Okay. D&D. Idea receiving and sending. Call center instructions. Press 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Great. Wow. So let's see what it is. And I think one of you got it right. And it's almost, I think, the first time that somebody has got this right in the number of sessions that we've done on this. It is missed call, where if you remember almost a decade ago, people used to do these missed calls to give a signal to announce themselves because if it rings and if you pick up the call, it would be counted as a call. And this a lot of marketers used, because of this, they found it difficult to make money out of the free missed calls. So the question at hand here is, can you use something for a different purpose or view it with different lens, and what opportunities are being missed, and how can you lower cost or time, which I think are the biggest constraints as per the previous poll. So remember to apply the insight that you get from this on the question in your mind. The cues for you here are missed opportunities and lower the cost, and also to look at it from different lens. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. This is a multi-layered image, and what comes to your mind when you see this? Temples, progression, chariot, home, haven, okay, hierarchy, interesting. Mythological story, giant says opportunities, puja, rituals, supplier, okay, another hierarchy, rituals, religion, Banaras, gatekeepers, multi-story building, guards, river, flip art, giver, taker, trusted temple and pujari, climb to achieve goal. Okay, a lot of you are seeing it as levels in hierarchy. achievement, Indian Maslow. Interesting. Journey, multi-level God parking, worship, thought levels, diversity, relativity, roadmap. What's next? 5 elements, meditation, okay? Multi-level roles, faith. Fantastic. I think you're all really, the divergent thinking muscle is very much in action. As you can see, there's more coming. Protecting tree, evolution, fishing. Okay, all fantastic perspectives. Again, there's no single right answer here. And this is life by the river. And some of you all, I think one or two of you also said Banaras. So it is Varanasi, which really exemplifies the life by the river. And here, as you can see, divergent thinking needs some sort of uncertainty to push us to think creatively to fill those gaps. And this naturally leads to making different choices and going on in different directions. And like you can see here, one image has sent you all in multiple directions. And that was the intention of using these abstract images. And the question at hand here is, what can you draw wisdom from? And what would going with the flow mean? Or what would going against the flow mean? And remember to apply this to the question that you have on your mind. Hopefully you're having insights as we go along this exercise, and hopefully you're making some notes. So the cue for you is go with the flow or go against the flow. Okay, here comes the last one, and my favorite one, typically because it's not used in many of the innovation toolkits or exercises. And I'm sure this one will also be easy to guess. Yeah. Most of you are saying Vikram Betal. Some of you are also saying never give up. Okay. King, Ravana, okay, dance, God in some form, Kathakali, okay, dancing girl, demon under a tree, question answer, devil's head, perseverance, itch your own, okay, itch you can't scratch, okay, interesting, demon hanging on the head, powerful idol, different facade within you, monster, Palak, Baskin Robbins, garnishing, gone horribly wrong.
We can actually see the divergent thinking work really well now.
Yeah, totally. Evil attacking from behind. Wow. Adversity, okay. Wonderful. Great. I think most of you got it right in the beginning. And again, there's no right answer, but at least the inspiration that we had for this was the Vikram Betal, the famous Vikram and Betal story. And the question at hand here is what monsters, and here when we say monsters, really what baggages do you want to get rid of and how? And what if the baggage is rid of? Are you attached to those monsters, and what is the dilemma? So again, apply this to the question at hand and see what insights come up for you. The cue for you is, what are the monsters that you're carrying and why? And I'm hoping that all of you have kept applying the questions to the creative problem that you had in mind and saw what insights came from it. We could even see if one or two of you want to share it in the chat box. And what you saw here was a sample of 5 cards from the 108% Indian toolkit. And each card, like you can see, has a prompt, think creatively. At the back of the card, we have open-ended guiding questions to help us almost like silent brainstorming of sorts, even if you're trying it alone. And these are random 5 cards that we have picked, and there are many such cards which are inspired by Indian quirks. And each question and each image will prompt you to think divergently, as you can see. Always thinking about my organization. Okay, is that your insight, Arvind? Okay, while we wait for Arvind to respond, this is really what we hope you would have achieved from this exercise, the passion, the problem, or the provocation that you would have picked, and the cues that you would have applied, unlimited choice, building curiosity, staying true to your core values, what are those missed opportunities, Do I go with the flow or do I go against the flow? And what baggages or monsters am I carrying and how do I get rid of that? And finally, what are some of those insights that you would have got as part of this exercise? And as you can see, divergent thinking combines both rigor and creativity. It starts with a prompt, it pushes you to think creatively and critically and generate your own ideas to arrive at a range of plausible solutions. And it doesn't matter what problem you have in your hand, but you can think at multiple solutions and multiple perspectives. Over to you, Neel, from here.
So what you would have noticed here is divergent thinking doesn't give you answers right away. It gives you direction. It doesn't actually give you say this is the answer. It sends you in multiple directions. So the image sends you in a direction, the question sends you in a direction, even a wrong guess sends you in some direction. It's very important to pick those directions and see what you can do with it. So remember that divergent thinking is all about getting different directions, typical directions that you would not see at work. So for example, a baggage question. A baggage question could be, whenever I go to Robert for approval, he doesn't approve it. That's a baggage. What are you doing about it? Sometimes we are very happy that Robert actually doesn't approve it, because if he approves it, you have a problem. So very often we are also attached to the baggage. So that's an example of a different question which we ensure that we ask as part of the divergent thinking process. What you also notice, and I think this is fantastic, as you've seen from the first divergent thinking game to the last one, where I think we had an example of Baskin-Robbins garnishing gone horribly wrong, your brain begins to move. And that's what you want. You want your brain to keep ticking. You don't want your brain to be stagnant. So what happens in this process, your brain begins to move. It's a relatively slow process. You can't expect to be a divergent thinker immediately right away. But yes, in processes and domains that you're comfortable with, you will actually move faster because your brain is constantly thinking about it. As somebody said, I'm constantly thinking about my organization. In that context, likely you will be able to move faster. But overall, divergent thinking tends to be a relatively slow process. What is important here is you tickle your brain with unusual avenues. If you're going to look at regular places, you're not going to get unusual ideas. And again, this is a story I'm going to connect with as I join the dots, what we started at the initial part of the session. But remember to look at unusual avenues, and that's why we say tap into India. Look around you. There is so much happening around you. We have found ways to make unshareable things shareable. We have found ways to adjust. Each of these are our traits, and I don't mean jugaad. All I'm saying is take that insight, apply it to your problem, and see what you find. Therefore, what should you do if you want to get better at divergent thinking? One is, we say, use tools. You could use any tool. You could use no tool, just look out of the window, sufficient. But use a tool, but tickle your brain. Be conscious, and this is why we asked you, what is your creativity experience? Unless we are conscious of that experience, it is actually not going to help us. Therefore, be conscious. It is a flywheel. I'm going to come to this flywheel thing in a minute. But the key to remember, I think Charu has been mentioning this to you again and again, note it down, keep a notepad, have those ideas, because it will disappear. These ideas, these directions are volatile. Therefore, practice the idea, whether it's Evernote or Google Keep, but ensure that you keep notes. That's the only way you're going to keep it. The last point is it's a flywheel. And there's a fantastic expression for it. It's called l'esprit d'escalier. It is the expression I couldn't think of. It's a French term, and it is the reason why it's called the witty comeback you think of after the time has passed to use it. If that sounds complicated, I'll simplify it. The typical place where we experience this is when you just had an argument at home, you lost it. As you walked out, you realized, oh man, there is this one sentence I should have said. Happens in exams, happens in vivas, happens at the point where your boss has told you something snarky and you want to get back but you forgot. So that's because the brain is working in the background. The brain hasn't given up on you yet. So the brain is still trying to win the argument long after it has passed, and therefore you find that, and especially if you play Antakshari and things like that, you would have played for Amit. I'm not going to comment, but yes, this is so true when I find with my wife. But the point here is your brain is constantly thinking. And this is the thing, right? The fact that your brain is thinking means you have to keep it excited enough. It's a flywheel. It keeps in motion. Newton's second law in action. You will keep getting ideas long after the time has passed. Which is why I wish my exams were at least 7 hours longer than the actual exam. I would have got a lot more marks than I did. But that's because the brain is working. The brain doesn't give up. So we now move into taking you into some use cases, experiences, and applications.
Yeah, there's a request to pronounce it again, Neel.
My French is not the best, but I'm going to try it as l'esprit d'escalier. It's called the spirit of the staircase.
Okay, it looks like that really ring true for a lot of you. Okay.
Also called the MC's curse.
Oh yeah, you're so right about it, Kaushik. You're right. You're right. Thanks for sharing that insight.
Great. So, now we're going to talk a little bit about the use cases and how we've applied and experienced this toolkit. And this has been used in a variety of scenarios. One is, like we saw, problem solving. Take a problem and look at the cues and prompts to come up with multiple perspectives. Personally, I've used it in a coaching engagement where you're helping the person or helping the coach to really becoming unstuck with just giving these questions and images as prompts. And because you're not really having head-level conversations and they're connecting at a deeper level, you'll see those insights emerging really beautifully. Facilitation, it can be multiple scenarios like strategic thinking, culture, D&I, brainstorming. Neel and I had this opportunity to use it in a brainstorming exercise for about 30 different learning heads. And all of them were given one card each, and we were supposed to come up with ideas by keeping that particular cue in mind, and we were able to generate great options. D&I is diversity and inclusion, Chandra, and we've used it in those facilitations as well. It can be a great icebreaker, warm-up, or a closure activity like you saw here. Entrepreneur keeps it at her desk for every day for problem solving. This is one of the use cases that we've got from a person who has used it, almost using it as an inspiration, which is at her desk all the time. And Neel, you want to add anything here?
Yeah, so I thought we can move to user stories because we had this entrepreneur who told us so that there is a question on the card which says, who is your unlikely ally? And apparently it triggered her to think about some of her competition as allies. So this was one story that we heard from a user who actually used the card.
I already spoke about the conference design, which used. Yeah, I think the most often it's most often used for problem solving or brainstorming as a set of cards to trigger a set of ideas and really go into blue sky thinking without really thinking about constraints and then helping you to converge. Yeah, this is an interesting one. We've heard a couple of stories, and I've used this as well, where we've had visitors to India, and you've used some of these cards to tell stories about Indian quirks, Indian way of doing things, using those images and using the stories that's there behind the card, and that's a great conversation starter.
So this was a consultant who actually ended up. So his wife was testing the card and he took it to his office and he used it as part of a strategic thinking workshop and he came back and said, "Oh wow, that really helped my team open up with a lot more ideas." I have personally also used it in another strategic thinking workshop where the team was given some of these cards and they used it to come up with a new way of working for their team. An entrepreneur who, again, another one who took it, actually said he was trying to revamp his business model, and he came back and said it really made me think of who is my ecosystem, and that enabled him to think broader. So a little bit of background into this. This happened because about 3 years ago, a client asked us to make a brainstorming toolkit, and I looked around and we saw that there were no Indian brainstorming toolkits at all. The only ones that were available were Western. So I thought, why not? Why not make an Indian brainstorming toolkit? And that's how a bunch of us came together. And I think we have the illustrator on the panel, Harsh Pandya. The illustrations on the card are all by him. And a bunch of us came together because Charu and I were already working on how do we make India look different. And we found Tapan, Niket, and Harsh who were interested in working on similar things. And it took us 3 years to actually make the product into a reality. And what you experience, those 5 cards were all samples of the actual product. What we have apart from this is a virtual creativity workshop, a short creativity webinar for understanding and divergent thinking. We also have a longer version of it. Of course, we had created this in a pre-pandemic world. It was supposed to be a gathering in room session, but now that is gone, we have modified it to make it into a virtual creativity workshop. So we have used the cards and built a creativity workshop around it. And it's been an interesting journey in the last few months as people have used it and we have got feedback, and we shared some of those with you as well. So I want to come and actually close the story of Malcolm McLean. So the picture on your screen is a truck of the McLean Trucking Company, as you can see. As I told you at the start, McLean was obsessed with getting this truck to go faster from point A to point B. So at first he said, why don't I just take the whole truck and put it on a ship? He tried, but that took a lot of space. So then he said, I'll get rid of the power cabin, that's a red box, that's a power cabin, and just put this piece into the ship. He did this a couple of times, and then he realized those wheels are taking a lot of space. Now, if you notice, once you remove the truck and the wheels, what is left is actually a container. And on the 22nd of April 1956, the Ideal X set sail from New Jersey to Houston on its first maiden voyage, carrying 58 containers. This Ideal X was not a container ship. In this process, Malcolm Lean actually bought a ship, a tanker ship, modified it to carry containers. He had to build container cranes. He had to figure out a way to latch the containers, to lock the containers. There was a whole dispute on the standard size of containers. But can you imagine shipping life without containers? The interesting thing here is McLean had nothing to do with shipping. All McLean wanted to do was get the goods from point A to point B at the most cost-effective and fastest way possible. The shipping companies weren't interested. The shipping companies thought their job was operating ships. Malcolm McLean said their job is not operating ships, but actually about getting goods to other places faster. But the shipping companies couldn't care less. So Malcolm McLean actually bought a shipping company. He went through this entire process. That's why I said all eight things that we spoke at the start: imagination, curiosity, daring, taking risks. He did every single one of these. And in 1956, the first container ship actually set sail. And imagine, before container ships were there was a set of people called longshoremen who would load the ships. Every ship loading, unloading would take about 15 days. With containers now, there are ports which unload and load ships in practically a few hours. And if it were not for Malcolm McLean, this situation, this picture that you see today in front of you with containers would never have been possible. And that is the power of divergent thinking. So Malcolm McLean started by looking at the rules and saying, why can't this rule be broken? And that's what it is. So today you have shipping sizes in standard containers. It travels around the world, and these metal boxes, have revolutionized the way we transport goods around the world. And that's the story. That's how the entire piece on divergent thinking, comes together. And what I would like you to do now is, Roger, if you could get us the poll number 4 to ask you how was the experience. Yeah, Kapil, thanks for asking that question. Any reason for 108? So 108 it's a sacred number in Indian, everything Indian. But the reason why the number is sacred is that according to ancient calculation, and the modern calculation is pretty close, by the way, the Earth's diameter is about 108 times, the Sun's diameter is 108 times the Earth's diameter, and the distance between the Earth and the Sun is 108 Earths. Ditto for the moon. The distance between the Earth and the moon is 108 moons. The modern calculation is close to 109. Therefore, 108 is all about growth. So when we say 108, we mean, can we grow our mind? Can we expand our mind? And while we were working on it, we thought, why make it 100? Why should it be 100% Indian? Why not call it 108% Indian? And that's why the name of the card set is 108% Indian. So that's again a good question. Are design thinking and divergent thinking different? So, Abra, in design thinking, there is a certain segment, which is the ideation segment. And thanks for asking that question. The idea of creating a brainstorming tool actually emanated when I was running a design thinking session many years ago. And what happened was, in that brainstorming, a lot of times people get stuck. People do not think beyond certain very self-limited parameters. And what a tool does is it ensures that you really break the boundaries and go beyond what you would think normally. So divergent thinking is one part of design thinking, but yes, the tool ensures that you have a larger and wider range of ideas. Madhavan, yes, there are multiple explanations, but the one which we picked up for this purpose was the astronomical ones. Oh, Vijay, that's a good one. I didn't know software and technology containers actually had the concept taken from Malcolm McLean's containers. That's a new thing that I learned today.
Roger, can you publish the proposal, please?
All right, so that's good. Pretty much nobody says this is not useful in their roles. It's good to see the responses. So thank you all for being here. And I know Kaushik has his eye on the clock. I will hand it over to you, Kaushik, in a couple of minutes. So for all of you, there is a promotion code for the product PMI September 10, PMI SEP 10 at Amazon for our cards. That's the link. Look for 108% Indian creativity cards on Amazon, or you can use the short URL or the QR code. And I suspect you guys will share it in the mail after that, right, Roger? So you can reach out to us. coolcivillyyours@gmail.com. You can visit our website. Charu and I our LinkedIn profiles are here. We also have Harsh, who's our illustrator, who's there on the chat window. So maybe if you can elevate him to a panel. So all those gorgeous illustrations you see there are by Harsh. And we also had two more. Oh yeah, thanks. Actually, who said that? SK. I tried to do a 10.8% discount, but Amazon didn't allow me, so I had to put it at 10%. 108% discount is a little too much, but thanks for putting the idea. I'm glad your brains are still working with divergent thinking more. So yeah, we also have Tapan and Niket, who are two architects who worked with us as part of this process, and that's how the project became a reality. It took us quite a bit of time and energy to get this right, and the feedback that we received has been good. Charu, would you like to add anything before I ask for something to close?
So I think one of the things that you said earlier, Neel, on how divergent thinking is a muzzle, right? And of course, one of the ways that we are recommending is for you to use the 108% toolkit as prompts for your divergent thinking. But you can do it like Neel said, even if you look out of the window, there is an inspiration waiting for you. So to build this muzzle, you can do it in several ways. You can, pick any ordinary object like a paper clip or a paper plate, for example. Let's say you set the timer for 5 minutes and try to come up with as many alternative uses for that paper clip as you can. And what you'll find really valuable about this exercise that if you do it enough, your mind will start doing this automatically, even outside the confines of that little exercise. And it will become a natural thing which happens unconsciously for you. And everything around you can act as an inspiration. Journaling, and to that point which Neel made on how ideas can be volatile, and I'm sure you've had this experience as well, where you thought of something and then, before you know, you've forgotten it. And not all ideas will be worth implementing as well, but you never know what idea will trigger you or trigger for you, what that particular idea will trigger for you. So making a list of those ideas will always help. And actually coming up with good ideas is not really the point, but it's the act of generating multiple ideas to be working on. And automatic thoughts, I think we're all creatures of habits, right? Thoughts are quick, and we get into these habitual thoughts which comes on an autopilot mode due to our conditioning. For example, if your boss says, stop by my office later today when you get a chance, the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Or, what was wrong in the report that I submitted? I think another great exercise to build this muscle is to be aware of those automatic thoughts or autopilot thoughts and get into the habit of generating alternatives for them. So maybe at least once in a day, if you can try catch yourself in that automatic thought and then pause, jot down maybe 3 to 5 alternative thoughts on what could fit that solution. So in this particular example, you can think about, maybe I'm due for a raise, or maybe calling me to discuss that, or she wants me to see if I'm interested in taking over my peer's responsibilities before she takes off on leave, or maybe she wants me to, talk about an interesting project that is coming up. So all of these thinking of alternate solutions for your autopilot responses is a great way of practicing divergent thinking. Also thinking in pictures like we did today. Anything which is abstract or visual can help you in your divergent thinking. So these are just a couple of ways on how you can build that muscle.
So Kaushik, we are on time. You can open the panel to questions. Though, if you could, people, if you could just say one thing you learned today, and if you could share that on the chat window while Kaushik readies the question, that will help. And thank you, Charu, for the insights on how do you think divergently anyhow. So thanks, Rekha. Thank you, Yatin.
So, Neel and Charu, thank you. I have to admit, I didn't look at the clock at all.
Wow.
Fabulous session. And you've already done half my job by taking questions as it came in the chat window and the question and answers box. So, thank you for that. As Neel said, if you can all type out on the chat window, and all of you have been extraordinarily participative today, what is the one big takeaway that you all have before I ask Neel and Charu what they want us to take away from this? So can you please go ahead and type out your comments on the chat box for Neel and Charu? What's your big takeaway from today? 500 of us, I think we should get at least about 100 responses. No pressure.
Yep, it's a muscle. Divergent thinking can be used when you're planning. Yep. Some days, PMI days are awesome. Engage muscle creativity can be trained. Think differently.
I have a quick question for you, Neel. This is Asha.
Sure.
Have you had a very difficult or a very different kind of case study in your experience with divergent thinking?
So the short answer is yes, but if you can give a little more context, I can answer it.
What is that difficult situation for which you helped find the divergent thinking?
Okay, so I wish
solution, that is.
Yeah, understood. I wish I could say that I've done some really big problem like Malcolm McLean and created containerization for the world. But I think I have solved relatively local, smaller problems. But I think actually the production of 108% Indian itself is a divergent thinking thought, Asha. So 3 years ago, there was no Indian divergent thinking tool. The only tools that you had were Western tools. And I thought, why not create an Indian divergent thinking tool? It was incredible to me that over so many years, nobody had actually created and collated something like this in the innovation space. So it took us, and that's the other thing, right? That getting the idea is easy. Actually getting it to work on, actually working on it and taking it through opens up so many more divergent thinking possibilities. The number of times we reworked on this tool before we got it to the shape that it was. So yes, I would actually say that this idea itself has been one of the most divergent idea that I worked on.
So Yasha, I think we both were diverging, so go for it first.
No, sorry about it. I was just asking any particular industry where you gave more solutions.
Oh, so I did work with the pharma industry at one point. That was one place where we actually ended up giving a very, very different solution. But see, there's the other thing, right? It is about the presenting question. So you ask the right question. Asking the right question is important. So if you ask the right question, like if you see in Malcolm McLean's case, how do I move goods faster from point A to point B is the question to ask. So in all these cases, asking the right question or asking a whole bunch of questions gives you far better answers. So therefore, it is better to ask more questions if you want to get better results and apply divergent thinking to all those questions. And that's what if you notice, these are also questions. Our cards are questions that enable you to think differently. So it's a question that actually props the mind rather than pure direction.
Great. Neel, Charu, a lot more comments coming in, and most of them are summarizing what they are taking away. There are a few questions also coming in, but I'm going to start with a question from Muhammad Rafi. He wants to know what are the reading material available on divergent thinking and where can he get started?
Oh, so there is a fantastic book called Creative Confidence. That's one book you can definitely read. Then there's another book which is a very good read called The 10 Types of Innovation. again, a very, very good book on looking at innovation from multiple different lenses. You should definitely listen to Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk. And I think there's a couple of other people. Michael's, with an unpronounceable Russian name, has written a book on the concept of flow. There's a lot of literature out there, Mohammed. So it is one of the topics that a lot of people have written about. But yes, if you have to get practical tips, it's probably easier to just read up on a few simpler articles on the internet.
So talking about the unpronounceable Russian names, there was a question about how divergent thinking is similar to the TRIZ model, TRIZ, the TRIZ model, and is it the same or is it different?
So see, what the TRIZ model attempts to do is it takes a set of predetermined solutions. Like it gives you a solution, it's like a chart. So it has a whole bunch of boxes. You're supposed to look at each of those boxes. So while we put together 108% Indian, we actually looked at these models and we ensured that we go beyond that. See, it's a bit like this, right? Before South Africa came into the cricket scene many, many years ago, fielding was not a competency. So until then you asked anybody, the idea of fielding was to accompany the ball to the boundary, right? So what happened when South Africa came in was people suddenly realized fielding can save you 25, 30, 40 runs on the field. So it's a bit like that. So what we have tried to do is to send people in as many divergent directions as possible so that we uncover a solution that is not seen yet.
Neel,
Can we add here, we've not spoken much about convergent thinking, but it's really mostly in our school, in our education systems, and mostly in our workplaces, we are taught and encouraged primarily on how do you practice convergent thinking, right? Which is about the ability to take many pieces of information and data and generate one solution. So what we have tried to do through this model is to actually send you all, like Neel said, in different directions and see what it triggers for you.
Right. So speaking for most of the project managers, we are very used to going away in different directions. It happens in all our meetings. But then we are also very time conscious. So one of the questions from Kotam Raju is, you said divergent thinking takes time. It's a progressive skill. You have to explore your muscles around it. And it can be time consuming, but how do we use divergent thinking to get some time bound results or actions? How do we conduct it in a time bound manner?
Yeah, so the short answer is practice divergent thinking on anything. So, and this is where Charu mentioned this thing of how do I build that muscle? If you keep building that muscle sufficiently, at the point where you're supposed to use it, you will definitely get an answer. And that was part of what she said, right? Very often our mind goes in that autopilot mode. We don't think divergently. So what she said is continue to keep thinking divergently in little bits. And there may be spaces where you're comfortable doing that. For example, you may experiment in your kitchen. You may experiment with the children. You may wear a different dress combination. Each of these things are ways to build that muscle little by little by little. So yes, once you build that muscle, you can reach a stage of divergent thinking faster. Charu, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say use hypotheticals. That's a very easy way of divergent thinking. So any project that you're working on or any problem that you're working on, ask questions like, what if X happened instead? What would that lead to? Or suppose X were in charge, how would that change things? Or what would happen if we switched from A to B? Or if this took place today, what would it be like? Or imagine that C was not true anymore, how would it affect this? So use a bunch of hypothetical statements to create those assumptions. And that's a very easy way of using divergent thinking in your day-to-day activities.
So Kaushik, to summarize, basically it is a muscle you can use anywhere. So at this point when somebody says, okay, now think divergently, your brain is used to thinking like that.
So you're going to unconscious competence as a final stage, right? Means you have to do it every day.
Yeah.
But then there is a challenge there too. And Mahesh Pedanini asks this question. He says, we go divergently everywhere. What's the how to identify what is the most feasible tangent that I should take of all the different ideas that I get? How do do we lose time or a chance of learning chasing the wrong alternatives?
That's a fantastic question. That's again what Charu alluded almost prophetically to saying we have to think of converging also. It is not enough to think divergently in a 1,000 directions, but you also need to converge. And this is where part of the convergence can happen through the org culture, good or bad. But the organization says, hey, I am going to do this. So if you take a take a recent example of electric vehicles. A lot of companies are saying, no, we will not work on electric vehicles. Okay, organization goal shuts that door. Well, that door is closed. So some part of convergent thinking happens through constraints. Look, we don't have 6 months. We have only 3 months. We don't have $1 million. We have only $10,000. The constraints ensure that you go in a direction. This is one. The second thing, especially if you look at some of the newer companies and smaller companies in India, a lot of these people are reimagining very, very different things. So there is a company that's into producing electric scooters. It's a completely made in India scooter. Now, why did that come about? Because somebody in some company refused to look at it, which is why a lot of innovation happens in a place where the people are willing to look at a new idea. A lot of times companies are wedded to the old business model or an old way of doing this. Look, I don't want to do it. I think somebody asked this question about public sector banks. Fahim asked this question about public sector banks, but that is a fact because public sector banks are refusing to look at certain things. Certain other things are happening. And again, the classic example of UPI. In India, you won't believe UPI has practically overtaken almost all credit card transactions. It is divergent, and the US doesn't have UPI. Imagine, advanced country doesn't have UPI, we have UPI. So there are many such examples, but a lot of times it is a combination of culture. And today, why it is important is in a COVID situation, practically everybody needs divergent thinking. So the point is, push your ideas, push your agendas. You never know what might click and where it might click.
Awesome. So just wrapping up with a few quick questions, right? Where do you see this getting applied most in enterprises, in organization culture or at the people level?
See, mostly it is to get people to think divergently, Kaushik. It is for us to exercise our individual muscle. Ultimately, a set of people thinking divergently within a company will ensure that the company moves forward. You can't expect the leader to drive divergent thinking every time.
Right. And like with every new thing, how do you overcome the resistance to change? There are going to be people who are set in their ways, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So sometimes if you wait for a meteor to hit the dinosaurs, sometimes, again, thanks for asking, because sometimes, and that's the frustrating part of the process, right? It is not enough to come up with an idea, to take it through the system. And I think, by the way, Malcolm McLean's book, it's a book by Mark Levinson, the book called The Box. It's a fantastic story. The guy, if you look at containers, it is the most ubiquitous, the most unappealing thing in the world. But the amount of trouble this man went through to get containers, to create containers of all the damn things, you realize it is difficult. So yes, it is a process. They may wear us down at times. We may wear it down at some other times. But yes, there is no straightforward one answer to that question.
By the way, a very interesting divergent use of containers is that they are now used as low-cost housing or as housing during floods and other scenarios.
Yeah.
So yeah, McLean must be very happy. And that question about the resistance was from Aparna Kishore, so call out to her. And one last question, this is from Sundaresan. He says, do divergent thinking and six thinking hats converge at any point? How do these methodologies work together?
Doesn't matter. You have six thinking hats or any thinking hats. Like we said, you don't even need a tool. Look out of the window. All you need to do is to get your mind and brain to think divergently. That's all. It doesn't matter how you do it. If it means biting into a chili and thinking divergently, that's fine as well. I mean, and I'm not being facetious here. The point is, you have to give your mind the space to experience a zone that is outside the comfort zone. So whatever works for you. Therefore, six thinking hats work for you. That's fine. You can use that. If you want to use surf on the internet, get a random idea, that's fine. Music works for you, do it. So, and I think Charu is another example. Charu's a dancer. So everyone has their own ways of figuring out their own creativity. Harsh, our illustrator, he draws. He just draws all sorts of things before he gets something interesting to do. So different people do different things.
Excellent. So, Neel, Charu, once again, thank you so much. What I loved with this session and what it come out in the chat and in the question and answers, right? We always say engagement is the best way to assess how good a session has been, and it has been fantastic with over 500 people. What I really loved about your lesson about knowing the rules and breaking the rules, and divergent thinking sits so well with what PMI is doing with disciplined agile, the Shuhari method, follow the rules, go away, break the rules, and then completely find your own rules. So I think it sits in beautifully with divergent thinking. But my biggest takeaway is that, paraphrasing, anybody can be creative. I always had this mental thing that there are some people who are born creative. but I think that's the biggest myth that you both have busted today, saying that anybody can be creative. But like any good thing, you say you have to exercise. So I have some mixed feelings about that. But thank you so much, Neel and Charu and Harsh, for joining. Harsh, your illustrations are fantastic. I have these cards at home. And what I absolutely love about it is that two things. One is there is a dash of patriotism that gets evoked every time I look at these cards, because we are so used to following the Western models of management and leadership. And two, just about every one of those cards bring about a little bit of a smile. So I would encourage everybody to buy the cards and try to use them. Even if you don't use them, there are very nice, colorful cards to keep in your house. Other people will think that you're creative. Just keep it on your bookshelf.
Thank you, Kaushik.
Neel, Charu, thank you. Wonderful having you here. And thanks to all the people who joined us again on a Saturday evening. Interesting things come for us. Roger, what's next for us? Next slide. All right. This year, because PMI has decided that there will be no in-person events, the national conference is now rebranded as the Common Ground Symposium, and will be on the topic of creating new realities, 21st and 22nd of November. Registrations will be opening in 2 days, and obviously the earliest people to register will get the lowest rate, aptly called as the Fortune Hunter, only till 5th of October. More details available at pmi.org.in/symposium20. You would notice that there are already 3 brilliant speakers who have been shortlisted and who have accepted. More speakers coming up. Take a look at it. Do share it with your friends and colleagues and register soon. Don't miss out this opportunity. And that brings us on to the question that everybody asks every time, the PDUs for this session. Roger, go back. Yeah. So 1.5 PDUs for this one. The claim code will also be sent to you on email. Please do make a note and apply for it. All the information pertaining to PMI Common Ground is available in one place. That's the hyperlink that's shown at the screen, pmi.org.in/common ground. Something very interesting in that website that's been uploaded last week, this week, is all the takeaways from Common Ground Season 1, all the 12 sessions in a very easy to host, in a easy to download PDF. Take a look at it. A lot of people have asked us about whether the PPTs can be shared. Unfortunately, they belong to the speakers, but these takeaways have been put together specifically for you to download and use. Do check it out. All the videos of all the past sessions are available. Video of this session will be available in a few days. And once again, PMI Common Ground is open to everybody, free of cost. All you need to do is register. The next session of Common Ground will be on 10th of October. We're just holding a bit of suspense on who's going to be the speaker there. We will tell you as soon as we know. That will be on 5th of October. Look out for an email, look out for a LinkedIn post, look out for a Facebook post. But we can promise you one thing. It will be an interesting session. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all on Saturday, the 10th of October. Thank you once again for joining us on a Saturday evening. Stay safe, take care, have a good weekend.